Guys, I cannot think of one thing in this world that I would rather do than talk fantasy sports. I've talked with you guys now for about 8 months about baseball. I now get to talk football with you guys. And that makes me excited, okay? We got a big week coming up. We got a lot of great games to talk about, okay? First off, you're listening to Chapp's Fantasy Chat. You're listening to this show via Lenny Melnick, FantasySportsNetwork.com. If you're listening to this show, I'm assuming that you're able to log in. I'm assuming that you're able to ask questions, interact. I welcome questions as we're talking through these games. It's certainly more fun when it's interactive. This show tonight is also brought to you by Jefferson's Whiskey. I put a president to rest tonight. President Jefferson was a good president. But enough of a hubbubaloo, right? Let's talk about football. Let's talk about these games. There's a lot going on, all right? Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Tonight's game ain't great. But that doesn't mean there aren't things to discuss. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it because there's more interesting games in the Sunday slate, right? We'll talk about those. But it is worth mentioning because there are a lot of you out there, whether it be setting a DFS lineup or maybe you have a Corey Davis and you want to know if he's a viable option tonight. Maybe you just need to know if Delaney Walker is someone you want to play, right? That's what we're here to talk about. And as we go through these games, guys, chime in. And we'll talk about it. We'll really sit down and discuss it guy by guy, case by case. I want to start up by talking to the chat room here. I see Ed's in here. Welcome, Ed. George, thanks for showing up. I appreciate your company. And of course, Vic, you're here as well. So, starting out good early. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. But let's talk about Thursday night. Thursday night, like I said, isn't great. There's a lot of rumors swirling around about Jalen Ramsey being traded, whether or not he will play tonight. But you know that's kind of just it's the way that things are now in the current environment in the NFL. Jacksonville's going to have to deal with that. But as it sits, they're still going to play this game. And there's still some things to take away from it. Okay? So let's talk about, first off, home underdogs, right? They're usually that way for a reason. Why is Jacksonville getting points at home? Well, maybe it has something to do with the fact that Tennessee has won 4 of the last 6 contests. Won the last 4 contests and 6 of the last 7 contests against the Jaguars. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that Jacksonville is playing a backup quarterback. He's been effective, okay? He's not been great, but serviceable. He is completing 77% of his passes, and he has a 3-to-1 TD to interception ratio. So that's not terrible. But I just don't see it as sustainable. Okay? If you look at Gardner Minshew, and you look at the fact that there's supposed to be wind and rain tonight, 40-mile-an-hour gusts, it's going to make it really hard for these quarterbacks to throw through the air. All right? Now, on the flip side, Marcus Mariota is 6-2 versus the Jags with an 8-3 touchdown interception ratio, and he's got 2 more additional touchdowns rushing. He's someone that can beat you with his, Mariota is marginal, right? But that doesn't mean he can't be effective tonight. I think he'll have to run some. I think he'll have to provide a few plays with his arms. And I think he'll be able to do that. Two guys I want to talk about, again, on the Jacksonville side of the ball are, well, the first one's on the Jacksonville side of the ball, DJ Chark. DJ Chark is one of those guys who was highly thought of last year, did not do well, and then this year has kind of shown up out of nowhere. On the year, he's caught 11 passes for 201 yards and a touchdown. He and Minshew have good rapport. Mind you guys, Chark is 6'4", and he has 4.3 speed. Normally, under normal circumstances, I would say cue up DJ Chark for the game tonight. Can you guys hear me? Let me know, by the way, please. So I'm here to tell you from a fantasy perspective, and I'm an owner of Chark, and in a couple of different leagues. Stay away from him tonight, because he might still have a good game. Okay? But with the inclement weather, you really have to back off of him because he is more of a deep threat. If you have to start Chark, if you must start him, do it. But if you have other options, which I would hope you would, steer clear. I love playing on Thursday nights. The thing about playing on Thursday nights, though, it can really burn you. You don't want a zero burger from DJ Chark to sit and stew on for the next 4 days, wishing you would have played so-and-so or so-and-so. That's my only point. Here's a guy you're probably going to have to play tonight. Delanie Walker. I think Delanie Walker kind of sets off this whole Tennessee offense in a way. Mariota certainly seems to be comfortable throwing the ball to him. In a run-heavy offense, he's got 12 targets, 9 receptions, 94 yards, and 2 touchdowns in 2 games. Now, mind you, last week he was pretty quiet. He did still get 6 targets, caught 4 of them for 39 and no TDs. He had 2 touchdowns week 1. So, analysis of the game.
And poor chlorophyll is caught in the middle of this.
Chlorophyll? More like borophyll.
That's my opinion of tonight's game. But that said, we'll still prognosticate. I think the Titans win 23-21. I think Derrick Henry rushes for about 80 yards and a touchdown. I think Marcus Mariota finds Delanie Walker. I think A.J. Brown has a good game. And on Jacksonville's side, I think they struggle. I think the fact that Ramsey is out is going to hurt them mentally. So, again, not the most interesting. Let's talk about these other games because this is where it gets really good. How about a 5-star games? If you look at the 1 o'clock games on Sunday, and this is kind of how I want to do this. There's 8 games on Sunday at 1 o'clock. Some of them, quite frankly, aren't great. Others are pretty darn good. Okay? So let's go ahead right now and talk about the ones that really get our juices flowing, right? And sitting here in Indianapolis, I can't help but be a little bit excited about this game with the Colts. The Falcons and the Colts this weekend at 1 o'clock, the over-under is 47.5. The Colts are 2.5-point favorites. Intrigues me. And I'll tell you why it intrigues me. I think people are underselling the Falcons. The Falcons are going to be really tough to handle for the Colts this weekend. Now, I know what you're going to tell me. The Colts currently have the number one pass defense, 167 yards. The third overall defense, 275 yards. Fine. But have they faced Julio Jones yet? Have they faced Calvin Ridley? Because there's not many of them in the league. Okay? There's not many of them in the league. These guys, if you look at what Atlanta has assembled, they got a pretty good thing going on right now. Another indoor game for the Falcones. Last week, Julio erupted. He'd been quiet week one. He had 5 catches, 10 targets for 106 yards and a touchdown. The good news to that, the more good news to that is Calvin Ridley did not go away. He had 8 receptions on 10 targets for 106 yards and a touchdown. So 3 touchdowns out of his 1 and 2 receiver. It's hard to cover 2 guys as good as those guys are. Okay? Here's the third point. The point that other people won't talk about. But I think it's important to talk about. Really good teams that have a 1-2 punch, if you could stop that 1-2 punch, you could beat that team. Devonta Freeman, Austin Hooper, and Mohamed Sanu caught 11 of 17 targets last week versus the Eagles for 92 yards. They had 11 passes. So that they're just versatile enough. They don't have to be spectacular. Although those names are pretty talented. Let's all agree to that, right? That they're keeping the opposing defense honest. I think it's really important to take note of that. These ancillary guys, the Freeman, the Hooper, and the Sanu, really make it tough for defenses have to stay honest versus the Falcons because of those other guys. It allows Ridley to be open. It allows Julio to be open. I've said this before. I'll repeat it tonight. Julio Jones is a great wide receiver. Okay? But Calvin Ridley makes this team. Calvin Ridley makes this team because he plays football like a basketball player. He plays football like a power forward. He's able to body receivers up, or D-backs up, and get the ball. He's also able to beat you deep. He's the primary red zone target for the Falcons, and it's really going to be hard for the Colts to match up with that plethora of talent. Now, Ed, I'm not saying they can't do it. And you're right. Leonard is hurt. I'm saying it's going to be tough. And I'm saying if the Colts win this week, they're going to be really good, Ed. That's what I'm saying. This is a pivotal game for both of these teams. And this is my game, well, one of my 2 games of the week. The other one's pretty everybody's game of the week, right? But this is a really good one as well. And I think we need to talk about this, right? So how does this break down? Because really, if you think about it, the trajectory of these teams, win or loss, it really could be pretty impactful losing this game. Neither one of these teams want to go to 1 and 2. They both have aspirations of the playoffs. So, here's what I think happens. I think you guys know I just said it. I think that it's going to be really hard. I think the Colts will hold the Falcons in check most of the game. But I think the talent wins out in the end in this. I think the Falcons win 30-23. I think that Julio and Ridley score 3 touchdowns combined between them. One scores 1, the other scores 2. I think Devonta Freeman gets a little bit on track here. But I think the Colts show well in this. I think Brissett's a good quarterback. I think that they battle their butts off and they take away a lot of I think, the fact that Marlon Mack is now dinged up is concerning. Hamstring, I think it is, Ed. It's concerning because he's the heart and soul of that offense. And if he's not 100%, Nyheim Hines isn't the same type of player. Let's talk about the real game of the week. This is the one that might be the game of the year. I mean, coming from a Steeler fan, it's really hard to admit how good I think the Ravens are going to be. Let's talk, before we get into the game, here's an interesting little tidbit. Here's the 2019 leaders in targets per route. Okay? Marquise Brown is getting 40% of the targets of the routes he runs. Pretty impressive. Keenan Allen is at 38. Michael Thomas is at 33. DeAndre Hopkins is at 30. And Sammy Watkins is at 30. I'll say it again. Marquise Brown is getting more targets per route than Keenan Allen, Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, and Sammy Watkins. Here's an even freakier stat. Antonio Brown's getting 50%. Excuse me, 57%. But we're not talking about that game. I just wanted to bring that as something I found, thought pretty interesting. How about this game? Man, what a game. The Ravens and the Chiefs. 2 great young quarterbacks. Maybe the 2 best young quarterbacks in the game. Lamar Jackson's 8-1 as a starter. 8-1 as a starter. His only loss coming up against the Chiefs. Don't think he doesn't have revenge on his mind. He wants to pay the Chiefs back. He feels he's capable of doing it. All the talent on offense in this game. 54.5 over under. What do you guys think about that? I think this game, they score 54.5 in the first half. I didn't do so great on my bets the last week. I don't want to reflect on that. But I think this is a lock. Game is being played in, hold on, Arrowhead. I mean, I think they score 54 points easy, 55 points easy. That's the lock of the week, guys. Okay? Never mind the point spreads. Let's not, that stuff's not, let's talk 55 points in the Chiefs and the Ravens. Count me in. Let's talk about fantasy now, right? Mark Ingram. Last year, Kenneth Dixon and Gus Edwards averaged 5.3 yards per carry against this Chiefs defense. I'll say it again for emphasis. Kenneth Dixon, not very good. And Gus Edwards, also not very good. 5.3 yards per carry. Had 126 yards versus the Chiefs. I think it was week 15 last year. Mark Ingram's much better than those guys. Okay? That's my point. When you're talking about a fantasy lineup, if you're lucky enough to have Mark Ingram, he is solid running back one territory this week against these Chiefs. Here's the thing. I'm going to give you guys a sleeper. Ed, I know you know where I'm going. I've said it, and I'm not hedging from it. I said it Tuesday night with Arnie. I said it last week. Justice Hill is the guy here who stands to benefit the most from this shootout, right? This is going to be a shootout. Justice Hill is the number 2 quarter running back on this team now. Clearly. Dixon and Edwards are still there. Hill is the number 2. Ingram is not healthy. I think it's his shoulder is hurt. He'll probably play, but he's not 100%. So there's a really big opportunity here for Justice Hill to maybe be a sneaky play this week. Just something to keep in mind, okay? Let's go back to Hollywood Brown. Guys, this is a guy who people are grossly underappreciating. Antonio Brown's nephew is of the same ilk of Antonio Brown. He's been targeted 18 times in 2 games, and he's averaging 19.4 yards per reception. He has a catch rate of 66.7%. Just saying. All this shit about him being a one-trick pony, highly overpublicized. Think about Antonio Brown when he was in his first 2 or 3 years in the league. That's what you're going to get with Marquise, with Hollywood. I'll give you another tidbit that people don't generally think about. With Kyler Murray at Oklahoma, basically, Marquise Brown ran a post route. That's it. In college at Louisville, Lamar Jackson's best throw was a post route. It's a head scratcher, right? Wonder how they put that 2 and 2 together. It doesn't matter if he's getting all these routes. It matters that when he's getting the routes, they're going to him. That's what matters. Guys, I go so far as to say, if you can go make a trade to get Hollywood Brown, do it. To steal from Arnie Jones, do it. This kid's going to be consistent. I've said it from the beginning. I'm doubling down on it now. The Ravens are legitimate, and Marquise Brown is the number 1 receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. He's not going to be interested every snap, but who gives a shit? I'll move on. I think you get my point. So what do I think about the game? I'll tell you, this has the potential to be the game of the year. When it's all said and done, I think that the kid, Lamar Jackson, gives a valiant effort, but comes up just short. I think Kansas City wins at home. I see a 38-34 contest. If you bet the over, you're eating your popcorn and drinking your soda by the middle of the third quarter. Celebrating a win. Okay? I think Lamar Jackson has 200 passing yards and 100 rushing yards. I think he has 3 total touchdowns. I think Hollywood Brown scores again. I think Justice Hill gets in the end zone. Kansas City, I think Mahomey throws for 4 touchdowns. Kelsey's heavily involved. Hardman's involved. And I think you see a little bit of the rookie running back, whatever the hell his name is. It's slipping me right now. Sorry. I think you see some versatility in the backfield. Okay? So, this is the game of the week, guys. This is the game of the week. If you're not tuned into this, you're just not wanting to watch good football. Let's move on, because there's a lot of games, and time's creeping, right? How about moving on from our 5-star games now? Let's talk about, these are some 4-star games. Got a couple 4-star games. These games are right on the verge. A lot of interesting things going on. Minnesota, 9-point dogs against the Raiders. Interestingly enough, when the lines came out on Monday, Minnesota was a 7.5-point favorite. So the line has moved to 1.5 in the past 5 days. Significant. That means the money's on the Vikings. And rightfully so. But I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball here. Because I didn't buy a direct ticket this year, so I've been not stuck. I've had to watch what the market has allotted me this year. And that has been the Vikings twice now. And I'm okay with that because I have multiple shares of Dalvin Cook. And boy, he's been fun to watch. Guys, if you haven't seen this young man yet, he's going to be a top 3 back going into next year. Dalvin Cook is on a world destruction tour, and the booking agent is Kevin Stefano and Gary Kubiak. They're the masterminds of the world destruction tour of Dalvin Cook. Guys, you're not going to stop this guy. Kubiak, the master of the zone read, loading up this Viking offense to make Cook as comfortable as he possibly can be. It's working. In 2 games, Minnesota as a team is tied for second in the NFL with Indianapolis with 370 rushing yards. Dalvin Cook followed up a 111-yard, 2-touchdown performance in Week 1 with a 191-yard performance last week against what appears to be a much improved Green Bay defense. Oh, and he had that 75-yard touchdown run. Pretty impressive, right? Breakaway speed. Can we say that together? So, enough of the Vikings love fest. Let's talk about the cons. And he's under center, guys. Kirk Cousins is terrible. He's not good. He'll show glimpses. Last week, the Vikings are marching down the field to drive in for the go-ahead touchdown. Dalvin Cook had broken off 2 or 3 really big runs. The Vikings have the ball 1st and goal at the 8. This numbnut, Kirk Cousins, drops back on 1st and goal at the 8, running for his life, granted, throws the ball off of his back foot into double coverage on 1st and fucking 8. You can guess what happened. Interception, ball game over. There was still 6 minutes left. They had another kind of faux opportunity, but this was their 1st and goal at the 8. You just can't trust Kirk Cousins. You cannot trust him. So with that, your offense is very limited. You cannot count on Adam Thielen. You cannot count on Stephon Diggs. These guys are players that you must sell. You must sell any part of this Vikings passing game that you can. I urge you to now, before it's too late. This game, I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat the Raiders. I didn't put this on here for the Raiders. I put this on here because I think the Vikings have great fantasy allure and I think it's important to take note of what we're seeing when we watch these games. We're seeing Kirk Cousins not being the player that we thought he might be. We're seeing Gary Kubiak shift to a heavy run-focused offense. And it's working. Why would they stop doing it? Right? So, I'm just putting this out here for you guys. If you own Kirk Cousins, if you own Adam Thielen, if you own Stephon Diggs, make an offer. See if you can't get something for him now. Because in a month, it's going to be even worse. I think Minnesota wins this game. I think Dalvin Cook has another huge game. 24-12. I don't see a whole lot coming out of Oakland. Sorry, Arnie. I just don't see them being real fantasy relevant most weeks. And that's okay. That's okay. So, let's move on down this list. And let's talk about some of these other 1 o'clock games. These are kind of, I labeled these as the take 'em or leave 'em games. The one-trick pony games, right? So, either, like I said, it's just a game on in your market. You're stuck with it. Or, maybe, you just have to see what this Josh Allen kid's really like. This nerd at work keeps telling you about him, and you want to see how good he is. I'm that nerd, by the way. Right, Ed? So, let's talk about it. And I want to start with Josh Allen. The Bengals and the Bills. I talked highly about the Bengals last week. And I'm sorry, I'll resume calling them the Bengals again. I think they've earned that, right? The Bengals are a work in progress. There's going to be times when they look decent. I'll say this about Cincinnati. They're much better coached this year. They're more aligned with a modern day NFL offense. With Marvin Lewis, they look more like an 80s style offense. And that's not good because they weren't good. At least with Taylor, they're going to throw the ball around. And maybe Andy Dalton doesn't work out. That's okay. Because this team's in a transition. Now, on the flip side, a team that seems to have transitioned is the Buffalo Bills. And this is a team that all of a sudden looks like the second best team in the AFC East. And I know that's not saying a whole lot, but I think this team might be halfway decent. The Bills are 2-0. They're 6-point favorites. The 44 over-under. Here's a game where I think the under is a pretty solid bet because I think the Bills' defense is going to do a pretty good job of shutting down the Bengals. I think Josh Allen, again, who is 2-0 as a starter this year, has 507 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 2 more rushing touchdowns. But here's the thing. The Bills were sneaky smart in the offseason. They went out and got John Brown and Cole Beasley to remake a suddenly formidable offense. John Brown has caught 14 of his 18 targets on the year. Again, Brown's a deep threat. That's a really good rate. 195 yards and a touchdown. Cole Beasley, 9 of 14 for 123 yards. This team is formidable, guys. Their defense has always been good. Now they have a little bit of offense to throw at you as well. Allen's completed 68% of his passes. I think Josh Allen has 240 passing yards this week, 60 rushing yards, and 3 total touchdowns. Beasley has 90 yards and a touch. Buffalo wins this game 29-20. Allen's a must-play. If you have a chance to go out and get Josh Allen, you have to do it, guys. I don't care if you have to carry a third quarterback to do it. This is a guy that's going to help you. Beasley was a great move for the Bills because he's good. He's their dink and dunk guy. They complement each other so well. Let's talk about, and the stupid news of the week, the Green Bay Packers announced that Aaron Jones will see diminished shares of the football, coming fresh off of his 116 rushing yards and a touchdown with 34 receiving yards. Let's stop giving him the ball, dumb shits. So, they're talking about giving Jamal Williams more shares. They're talking about Aaron Jones. I'm sure just resting him, getting him so that they have them down the stretch. The Packers are 2-0. They're 8-point favorites this week against the Broncos, who are 0-2. 43.5 over-under. Don't really have any feelings about this game. But I do think it's interesting, the dynamic in Denver. When you look at Emmanuel Sanders versus Cortland Sutton and how that breaks down, I think it's really important to take note that it's going to be a matchup game with them all year. I think Joe Flacco, that offense suits him really well. I think Emmanuel Sanders, Jesus, will probably win that fantasy matchup most weeks. But there will be weeks when Sutton is huge. So you're really just kind of playing a game with them, right? Therefore, I'm staying away from it. Let's talk about some of these games. I don't want to talk about them. You know what I mean? I want to talk about the games that are fun and exciting. How about the Eagles and the Lions? Eagles are 7-point favorites. Over-under is 48. I think it's interesting to take note. Matt Stafford has the most come-from-behind victories in the history of the NFL since he came into the league. Excuse me, not in the history. He came into the league in 2009. He has 28 comebacks wins. That's more than any other quarterback during that time period. Maybe said a little better the second time on. So that's 28 comeback wins. 10 years. Not bad. Kerryon Johnson became only the 5th running back of Lions franchise history to eclipse 1,000 yards from scrimmage in his first 12 games of note. Here's some of the fun things, though. Here's some of the fantasy relevant things. Eagles defense has allowed 2 top 10 finishes from opposing quarterbacks this year already. Look for that trend to continue. Eagles have allowed 87 passing attempts through the first 2 games. That's the second worst in the NFL. Guess who's first? The Lions. Last season, the Eagles averaged 39 passing attempts for the year. Again, was the second most in the league. There's some different things going on in this game, and I think it's worth taking note. Danny Amendola, how about his matchup this week looks really juicy. And I think it's important because Avonte Maddox is Philadelphia slot cornerback. He has seen 16 targets this year in coverage and has allowed 13 receptions, 135 yards and a touchdown. That's not good. That is not good. I really like Amendola this week. I know he had a bad week last week. I think he saves a little face this week. Alshon Jeffrey, probably going to be out this week. Zach Ertz sees a volume boost when Jeffrey doesn't play. In games that Jeffrey doesn't play, Zach Ertz is averaging 12.3 targets a game. I think you'll see that again this week. That should follow suit, right? This is a good game. These are 2 well-balanced teams. I honestly think the Eagles win this game just because of their pedigree and the Carson. God, that's tough. It's just one of these games I didn't write a prediction down. I'm going to say Stafford comes back and wins this game, makes it number 29. Hell, I wrote the piece about it. Stand behind it. Stafford makes a 29th comeback win this week. And the Lions beat the Eagles. I'm not going to give you a friggin' score. Thanks for hanging on, guys. I got some good stuff coming up. Stay tuned. Let's talk about this game that gets me amped. This game gets me excited. And it's funny because these 2 teams stink. What game am I talking about? Talking about the Giants and the Buccaneers. 4:00 game. Rookie quarterback Daniel Jones makes his debut. His professional debut. They couldn't have picked a better team to be against. The Bucs were awful last season. They gave up 4,100 yards through the air. The 7th worst in the NFL. They surrendered 34 receiving touchdowns last year. 3rd worst. And only 9 interceptions. 7th worst. This year, they're only giving up 235 yards a game. Much improved, right? But let's think about that. San Francisco hung 31 points on them in week 1 and only threw for 166 yards. Maybe those numbers are misleading. Okay? Let's get down to why I like this game, though. I'm talking about fantasy perspective here. I'm standing up. You know what I mean business. There's a number of different angles here, but I also want to take a minute. I want to get into the Steeler game. But I want to talk about this because it's important. Daniel Jones. We talked about this on Tuesday night. I just want to reiterate why if you had Ben Roethlisberger, of course you can go pick up Mason Rudolph. You can also do that. But you can go pick up Daniel Jones, no problem. And he'll fill in admirably for the course of the year. Evan Ingram is probably going to be a top 2 tight end this year. He's going to be a target hog. He is a red zone threat. He is completely dependable. Saquon Barkley is probably the best running back in the game. So insert this rookie quarterback who has some arm strength, which Eli at this point in his career did not. It suddenly opens up the offense for anybody that's able to catch the ball 20 to 30 yards down the field. We don't know if the Giants have that because Eli can't throw the ball 20 or 30 yards down the field anymore. We're going to find out this week. And I'm thinking they do. Whether Sterling Shepard plays or not, he's still going through the concussion protocol. He's not been cleared yet, but he's trending in that direction. It doesn't matter. The guy I'm about to tell you about, Cody Latimer, will still have a significant role in this offense this week and for the foreseeable future because of Daniel Jones. Cody Latimer is 6'2", and he runs a 4.3 40. He's a cast-off from an awful system in Denver who wasn't able to capitalize on his skills. Just like the Giants haven't been able to with Eli at the helm. That changes this week, guys. Latimer will stretch the field. He is able to go up and catch the ball. He's a good high ball receiver. And the encouraging fact of all of this is, even though they've been with Eli, he's still been a part of that offense. So I'm saying he's about to be an even bigger part of this offense. If Latimer's out there, I urge you to go pick him up. I am a Daniel Jones believer. Now, let's flip the coin. Let's talk about the other team. Because there's a lot to like about the Buccaneers too, right? Here's my Buccaneers. Where's your Buccaneers, right? Again, this is a 48-point spread. I think the over hits easy here. Tampa Bay's a 6.5-point favorite. I actually like the Giants. But I'll tell you what I like about the Bucs. I like that they got a little bit of confidence on offense. I like that Jameis Winston's walking around saying, hey, I'm not as bad as I've been, because he's been bad, right? Here's the thing to take away. Ed, I'm talking directly at you here. Here's the thing to take away from Tampa Bay's offense. O.J. Howard's out. They can't trust him. They love Cameron Brate. Look for that transition. Look for O.J. Howard to be more of a blocker and less of a receiver. And look for Cameron Brate to start to take over that pass-catching role at the tight end position for the Buccaneers. This is a huge game for Mike Evans. Mike Evans has to have a big game here. Because Chris Godwin has been an absolute beast. Okay? Evans is at risk of losing his wide receiver 1 status. Godwin, if you guys that heard me in baseball know I love to do this. If you project his numbers out, he's on pace for 1,300 yards and 16 touchdowns. I don't think that's unattainable. Actually, I think that's rather realistic. 1,300 yards and 16 touchdowns might be a tad high. I think 1,300 yards is, I'd take that bet all day. Chris Godwin is just like, he's one of those guys that if you're in a league and you maybe have some players who aren't really paying attention, because there's a lot of that crap, right? Go try and lowball someone on Chris Godwin. There's about 5 or 6 receivers in this league that are getting ready to be the next big thing. Okay? And I think if you guys really have listened to me for any amount of time now, you know who they are. Ridley, Lockett, Godwin, Mike Williams. That's just off the top of my head. Chris Godwin is about to be elite status, okay? He already is. People just haven't taken notice yet. It's 10 till 8. I am going to get off at 8:15 tonight. But I do want to talk about a few more of these games because, I got to talk about my Steelers, okay? And I want to play a clip from my favorite movie that's just going to kind of get me into mindsets. Okay, as you know, Ben Roethlisberger's gone, right? I think once you listen to this clip, you'll understand where I'm coming from. Enjoy.
You know, when you get old in life, things get taken from you. I mean, that's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, 1/2 a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. Hell yeah. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. On this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. We claw with our fingernails for that inch.
Love it. Love it. Right? I mean, what an inspirational movie scene, right? And for those of you that might not know, that's Any Given Sunday. That's Al Pacino. And really, it kind of has to be the MO for the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, right? And I really do believe that it's a rallying cry. And Mason Rudolph is a good quarterback. Mason Rudolph sat the entire year last year and absorbed everything he could about this offense. He's spunky. He's a competitor. And here's the great thing. He's willing to go to battle. And I really think there's a lot of parallels between him and when Ben took over back in his rookie year. If you all remember, Tommy Maddox got hurt. I think it was the first game against Baltimore. And he was forced into the competition. And it was really hard because you didn't know what you're getting. But Ben stepped in there and he managed. Now, Rudolph, again, has a year of absorbing the NFL. Rudolph's got some talent. If y'all remember, James Washington was drafted the same year as Mason Rudolph. They were teammates at Oklahoma State and played 3 years together there. And they had tremendous success. If you look at, in the preseason, what Mason Rudolph did with James Washington, it was pretty darn impressive. Okay? And a lot of it was against first teamers because Ben didn't play in the preseason. Everybody's talking about, and a lot of prognosticators are giving you this part. Mason Rudolph's going to be pretty good. Juju Smith-Schuster's going to be all right. Okay, I'll give you that. Not many people understand the Steelers situation well enough to tell you James Washington is the main beneficiary of the Mason Rudolph regime beginning this week. James Washington is the one who can have double-digit touchdowns this year, who can have 1,000 yards, who can have 100 receptions. He's that kind of player. The Steelers' defense is a top 5 defense. You add in Minkah Fitzpatrick, everything is solidified. All these naysayers talking about an 0-2 Steeler team getting a top 10 pick are knuckin' futz. Okay? That shit ain't happening. There's too much there. You got 4 first-rounders on the offensive line. You got a running back who survived cancer. You're deep as hell at every position. This team isn't going to fail. I'm perplexed about this because Tomlin is 3-8 in San Francisco. He doesn't do well out west. Okay? But all of that shit was with Roethlisberger. This is a new time. All of this talent's going to want to rally around this kid playing. I love the Steelers this week. They're getting 7 points from the San Francisco 49ers. You have got to be kidding me. That's easy flipping money, guys. Easy money. Devin Bush is legitimate. Terrell Edmonds and Minkah Fitzpatrick, all of a sudden, you think about this. Javon Hargrave, Devin Bush, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Terrell Edmonds. You talk about building your defense through the middle. I dare you to give me a better one. There ain't one. You're talking about a top 5 defense in Pittsburgh, and people think they're mediocre. They're about to be shown they're not. That's not the case. Sunday. Now, I just got to finish this.
When we add up all those inches, that's going to make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying. I'll tell you this, in any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die who's going to win that inch. And I know if I'm going to have any life anymore, it's because I'm still willing to fight and die for that inch. Because that's what living is. The 6 inches in front of your face. Now, I can't make you do it. You got to look at the guy next to you. Look into his eyes. Now, I think you're going to see a guy who will go that inch with you. You're going to see a guy who will sacrifice himself for this team because he knows when it comes down to it, you're going to do the same for him. That's a team, gentlemen.
You know, I was sitting here prepping for this show this morning, and I used to listen to that speech all the time. I used to play softball, and I'd listen to it before I go out. I mean, I'm sitting here pacing right now, right? And I think the moral to all that, and how I want to tie this into what I'm talking about, it's not always pretty. And the good teams adjust. The good teams go on the fly, and they build. The Steelers are really looking to do that right now. And I think Mason Rudolph brings that potential to the table. It's a refreshing change for Pittsburgh. Let's talk real quick about something else. I got, it's funny. Prediction. How about that? I'll give you a prediction. 31-17. Again, Steelers. Their defense, I think they caused 2 turnovers. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick scores. Talk about a bold prediction, right? 1 defensive touchdown. I think Samuels has 110 yards and a touchdown. I think Washington has 120 yards and a touchdown. And I think Rudolph throws for 340 yards. 3 TDs, 2 interceptions, and a fumble. Those are big numbers. You take that, right? Ed, what do you want to talk about? You got questions? Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the Saints and the Seahawks. You know, it's interesting. When you're doing research for these shows, you have a lot to absorb. And sometimes you don't write something down, but it sticks with you. So this is one of these things I didn't write down, but it sticks with me. First off, I think the Seahawks are a pretty good team. Okay? I think that's why I'm not as discouraged about the Steelers' loss last week. I think they lost to a good team. I think they're very well balanced. I love Chris Carson. But on top of that, I think that Rashad Penny, who stepped in last week after Carson had fumbled, I think a couple times, if I remember correctly, and he had a really good game. So they're deep at running back. Tyler Lockett, I mentioned earlier, is one of the top 2 or 3 top receivers that no one knows about. I think they will by the end of this year. I think that's the type of year that he's going to have. And DK Metcalf, this is the stat that I want to say. I don't have the stats in front of me. I think they said he has like 52% of the air yards. It was like the number 2% of the air yards for any team. And that's DK Metcalf. So, this is their first round pick this year. He was dinged up. People got a little bit concerned. But he stepped in and he's produced. So I think that Metcalf he might be out there on your waiver wire. Another one of those guys you might want to throw a cheapy offer at somebody and see if you can't catch a break. Because this is a guy at the end of the year, I think, Seattle likes to throw the ball. They got a really good passing quarterback in Russell Wilson. They have a really good complement. He's not a compliment. He's really a wide receiver 1, but he prefers to be in the slot, Tyler Lockett. If DK Metcalf can stretch the field, be a big physical threat in the intermediary, I think that balances out exactly what the Seahawks want to do. So this is a team out west that I think is very viable and has a chance for a really deep run. I think this team is the best team in the West. So, when you talk about it, Ed, I know you were talking about wanting a running back. Chris Carson has some injury history. Why not put on your bench a guy like Rashad Penny? He's going to get snaps every week. He's going to score you a handful of points. And the weeks like last week where he scores a touchdown, he could get you 15 to 20 points depending on what else he does. If you need a guy, I think Penny's a pretty low risk, high upside play if you have the bench space for him. Okay? So, see you, Ed. Thanks for coming by. So, in summation, let's wrap it up. Let's talk real quick. Let's talk real quick about just an overview about what we talked about tonight, right? Let's talk about some of the players. Let's talk about from DFS perspective. As I'm looking at the game, it looks like it is raining really hard in Jacksonville, so that's not terribly promising. The highlight of the night, there's 2 real big games that we're talking about that we're focusing towards, the Falcons and the Colts and the Chiefs and the Ravens. And the Falcons and the Colts, I really like Calvin Ridley, as I will pretty much every week. I really like Julio Jones. On the Colts side, if Marlon Mack does not play, it is troubling for the Colts. I don't care how good their defense is. They're not going to be able to stop Atlanta's offense. I think it's a real safe play. Betting the Falcons plus 2.5. I really like Ridley. I really like Julio. On the Colts, not so much, okay? The other game of the week, really important. I think you can get a lot of offense from this. The Ravens and the Chiefs. I love Marquise Brown. We talked about it, about targeting him, about going out and getting Marquise Brown, right? Lamar Jackson, 8-1 as the starter. His only loss against KC. He is quite determined to redeem himself. I look for Lamar Jackson to have a huge fantasy week. I look for them to fall short. I think he'll be one-upped by Patrick Mahomes. No shame in that, right? Mark Ingram, we talked about Justice Hill. We talked about him being a sleeper play for DFS and someone that you potentially might want to pick up. Vikings, we talked about Dalvin Cook. We'll talk about Dalvin Cook a lot as the year goes on. His World Destruction Tour. He is going to be a perennial top 5 fantasy running back, fantasy player. We talked about Josh Allen in Buffalo. I think he's a good play. Brown and Beasley, I think also are good plays. Fade Aaron Jones. Jamal Williams is due to get more shares. Matt Stafford, we talked about predicting his 29th comeback win. Talked about this being a really good game. The Buccaneers and the Giants, we talked about Daniel Jones making his debut. Talked about Cody Latimer as a possible pickup for Tampa Bay. Chris Godwin, the future of the NFL, right? So, without further ado, thank you for stopping by. Chaps Fantasy Chat, Thursday nights at 7:30. Next week, Arnie's going to be filling in for me, so please join in and support him. Until next time, good night.